Born in 1955 in the Mississippi Delta, Dorothy Jane was the youngest of two girls born to James and Dovie Edwards. There was an 8-year age difference between Jane and her older sister Barbara. Jane was a full-fledged daddy's girl, and as the baby of the family, she thought that the world revolved around her. That was until age 13. Her father was in the Marines during the war and received a head injury, which later developed into a brain tumor. At age 13, Jane's father died, and life would no longer be the same. Her sister Barbara had married and moved out of the home, so it was just Jane and her mom. Her mom had had to go to work to support them, so Jane was often left by herself to grieve alone. She was a beautiful girl, and at age 16 she became pregnant. At 17, she married and gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, Stephanie. Unfortunately, Stephanie's father wasn't really ready for a family, and the marriage ended in divorce. A few years later, Jane got engaged to another man and again became pregnant. This relationship dissipated before the birth of the baby. Jane moved in with her sister Barbara's family. Barbara knew a couple who were unable to conceive, and she made arrangements for this couple to adopt Jane's baby. Jane didn't know how she could take care of two children, but she did know that she did not want to give up her baby. So she basically ran away from her sister's house and moved in with a lady from church. On April the 17th of 1976, Jane gave birth to another healthy baby girl. And that baby girl was me. Shortly after my birth, Jane met and married Russ Brown, who later adopted me and Stephanie. This was the turning point in my mom's life. God had given her a man to love her and to love her girls. Life was not void of challenges, but she no longer had to face them alone. The next major hurdle in her life was the birth of a handicapped child. Raising a disabled child is both mentally and physically exhausting. I watched my mom struggle through it, but always pressing on. Despite my sister's physical and mild mental impairments, my mom always pushed her to do her best and to be her best. Because of my mom's tough love, my youngest sister was able to graduate high school. My mom has been the most influential person in my life, not because she's led a perfect life, but because she didn't. She made a big mess, but she let God turn her mess into His message. My mom has been fighting for me since before I was even born, and to this day she still does. She is always there for me when I need her, which is pretty often. Although she knows my faults, she sees the very best in me. She's my biggest fan. I grew up wanting to be nothing more than a mother because she was such a good mother, and I wanted to be just like her. This is my favorite childhood book that she used to read me. It's a little girl's paraphrase of Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31:10 says, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies." My mom is just such a woman. She's a perfect example of the woman described in Proverbs 31. She's a godly woman who always tries to be above reproach. We never had much money growing up, but all of our needs were always met. My mom would garden to feed us and sew to clothe us. She was often the first person up and the last person to sleep at night. She taught us to give to others even when we didn't have much ourselves. She taught us to pray and led by example a life filled with faith. She is careful with her words and always tries to be kind. This is a picture of my mom with me and my sister Stephanie. Exodus 20:12 says to honor your father and mother. I consider it a privilege to be able to honor my mother today and to fulfill Proverbs 31:28, which says, "Her children arise up and call her blessed." I am blessed today because God gave this amazing woman to me to be my mom. I pray that as I continue to grow spiritually, that I become more and more like her, the closest reflection to Jesus I know.